My name is Isadora, 30 years old, and working as a financial advisor in Boston. I grew up in a family that always put my younger sister first, no matter what I accomplished. But nothing prepared me for what I discovered last month. $115,000 charged to my credit card. The shock of seeing that number still makes my stomach drop. My own parents had used my card to fund my sister's luxury tour across Europe. What happened next changed everything. Before I continue my story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please leave a comment below, hit the like button, and subscribe for more stories about family betrayal and financial boundaries. Growing up as the eldest child in an upper middle class family in the suburbs of Boston, I always knew what was expected of me. Responsibility, achievement, and self-sufficiency were values drilled into me from an early age. My parents, Thomas and Diana Patterson, made it clear that education was the pathway to success, and I took that seriously. Throughout high school, I maintained perfect grades while working part-time at the local library. When college applications came around, I applied for every scholarship possible. My hard work paid off when I received a partial scholarship to Boston University. Even with the scholarship, I still needed to work 20 hours a week at a coffee shop near campus to cover my living expenses and textbooks. My sister Margot, 4 years younger than me, had a completely different experience. Where I was expected to earn my way, Margot was given everything. My parents paid her full tuition at Emerson College. They bought her a car when she turned 18. They covered her rent in a stylish apartment near campus, while I lived in a cramped dorm room with 2 roommates. When Margot wanted to study abroad in Paris for a semester, my parents dipped into their savings to make it happen. Meanwhile, I had to turn down an internship opportunity in New York because I couldn't afford the housing costs. This pattern continued well into our adulthood. After graduating with honors with a degree in finance, I secured an entry-level position at Beacon Financial Advisors. The starting salary was modest, but I knew it was a foot in the door at a prestigious firm. I lived with 4 roommates in a small apartment in Allston, taking the bus to work every day to save money. Meanwhile, after Margot graduated with a communications degree, she moved back home. My parents converted our basement into a stylish apartment for her, complete with a separate entrance and mini kitchen. She took her time finding a job, spending nearly a year exploring her options, while my parents covered all her expenses. Despite the obvious favoritism, I maintained a close relationship with my family. Sunday dinners at my parents' suburban home became a tradition. I would listen to Margot talk about her latest job in public relations, or the trip she was planning, while my parents beamed with pride. When I shared news about my promotions or client successes, they would nod politely before changing the subject back to Margot. Over the years, I built my career methodically. I earned additional certifications, took on challenging clients, and gradually moved up the ranks at Beacon Financial. By the time I turned 30, I had become one of the youngest senior advisors at the firm. My salary had tripled since my first position, and I finally felt financially secure. With my increased income came better credit opportunities. After years of building an impeccable credit history, I qualified for an exclusive black card with a high credit limit and premium benefits. I was proud of this achievement because it represented years of financial discipline. During one emergency when my father needed an unexpected medical procedure, I added my parents as authorized users on my credit card. The insurance was taking time to process the claim, and they needed to pay the hospital quickly. I trusted them to use it only for that specific purpose, and they did. Afterward, I forgot to remove them from the account, never imagining it would become an issue. Last spring, during one of our family dinners, Margot announced that she was feeling unfulfilled in her current marketing position. At 26, she felt she needed to find herself before settling into a career path. My mother patted her hand sympathetically. "A lot of young people feel that way nowadays. You should take some time to explore your options." My father nodded in agreement. "Maybe you should travel for a while. See the world before you commit to something." Margot brightened immediately. "I have always wanted to see Europe. Not just the tourist spots, but really immerse myself in the culture." My parents exchanged glances across the table. "We will figure something out," my father said. I thought nothing of this conversation at the time. Margot was always dreaming up new adventures, and my parents were always finding ways to make them happen. Little did I know that this time, I would be the one unknowingly funding her dreams. The weeks passed and life continued as normal. I was working toward a major promotion and had started looking at condos to buy. After years of renting, I had finally saved enough for a substantial down payment on a place of my own. I had my eye on a beautiful 2-bedroom in Back Bay with a view of the Charles River. The location would cut my commute in half and represent a major step up in my life. I had no idea that my parents' decision was about to derail all my carefully laid plans and test the boundaries of family loyalty in ways I never could have imagined. It was a Tuesday like any other when my life began to unravel. I was sitting at my desk during my lunch break reviewing my monthly expenses while eating a salad. I prided myself on keeping meticulous track of my finances. After all, I advised others on their money for a living. I practiced what I preached. I logged into my credit card account to make my usual payment. The balance displayed on the screen made me choke on my spinach leaf. $115,000. There had to be some mistake. My typical monthly charges rarely exceeded $5,000. Setting my lunch aside, I clicked through to see the detailed statement. My heart raced as I scrolled through a list of transactions I didn't recognize. Four Seasons Hotel Paris, $12,000. First-class airfare, $22,000. Luxury boutiques in Milan, $18,000. Private yacht tour of the Greek islands, $15,000. The list went on and on. For a moment, I thought my identity had been stolen. I grabbed my phone and called the credit card company, my hand shaking as I punched in the numbers. After verifying my identity, I explained the situation to the representative. There are charges on my account that I did not make. I need to dispute them immediately. The representative pulled up my account. I see the charges you are referring to. However, our records show they were made by an authorized user on your account, someone named Diana Patterson, my mother. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She had made these charges. But why? And for what? Ms. Patterson, the representative, continued. Do you recall adding this person as an authorized user on your account? Yes, I admitted, my throat suddenly dry. That is my mother. But I gave her access for a medical emergency last year. These charges are not authorized. I see. Since you did authorize her to use the card initially, this becomes a bit more complicated. Would you like to speak with her about this first, or would you like to proceed with the dispute? Let me call her, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Thank you for your help. I ended the call and stared blankly at my computer screen. The amount was staggering. $115,000 would wipe out most of my savings and completely derail my plans to buy a condo. How could my mother do this without even asking me? With trembling fingers, I called her cell phone. She answered on the third ring, her voice cheerful. Isadora, sweetie, what a nice surprise to hear from you in the middle of the workday. Mom, I need to ask you something. I saw some charges on my credit card, large charges that I didn't make. The card company says you made them. There was a brief pause. Oh, that. Yes, your father and I meant to talk to you about that. We used your card for Margot's trip. Margot's trip, I repeated, unable to process what I was hearing. Her European tour. She left last week. We thought it would be better to use your card because of the travel benefits and higher limit. We were going to discuss the payment plan with you this weekend at dinner. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The casual way she mentioned spending over $100,000 of my money made me feel like I was in some bizarre alternate reality. Mom, I choked out. That is $115,000. How could you charge that without asking me first? Well, we knew you would want to help your sister, my mother replied, her tone suddenly defensive. And with your new promotion, we figured you could handle it. Your father and I aren't in a position to fund the trip ourselves with retirement coming up. I sat in stunned silence, unable to form words. This wasn't a small favor or a misunderstanding. This was a massive financial violation. It is a wonderful opportunity for her. My mother continued, filling the silence. 6 months traveling through 12 countries. The connection she will make could really launch her career. You know how important networking is. Mom, I finally managed to say I cannot pay for this. I need you and Dad to transfer the money to cover these charges immediately. This is not okay. Her voice turned cold. Isadora, don't be selfish. Family helps family. Your sister needs this experience, and you are in a position to provide it. We can talk about it more this weekend. She hung up before I could respond. I sat at my desk staring at my phone in disbelief. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. I couldn't focus on anything except the betrayal I felt and the financial disaster looming over me. As soon as work ended, I drove straight to my parents' house in the suburbs. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had to confront them face to face. This couldn't wait until the weekend. Throughout the drive, I kept thinking about all the sacrifices I had made over the years, the scholarships I had worked so hard to earn, the long hours at the coffee shop during college, the entry-level position I had accepted, and the years I spent working my way up. All the careful budgeting and saving to build my financial security. And in one thoughtless act, my parents had threatened all of it, for Margot, always for Margot. When I arrived at their house, both of their cars were in the driveway. I took a deep breath and prepared myself for the confrontation that would forever change our family dynamic. I rang the doorbell even though I had a key. This wasn't a casual visit. This was a confrontation, and I wanted them to understand that from the moment they opened the door. My father answered, his expression shifting from welcome to wariness when he saw my face. "Isadora, we weren't expecting you tonight. I need to talk to you and Mom. Now." He stepped aside and I walked into the house I had grown up in. The familiar smell of my mother's potpourri filled the air, but the comfort it usually brought was absent. I headed straight for the living room where my mother was reading a magazine on the couch. "Isadora," she said, looking up, "this is a surprise. Not as surprising as finding out you charged $115,000 on my credit card," I replied, my voice shaking with anger. My father entered the room and sat beside my mother. A united front. They had always been that way when it came to Margot. "We were going to discuss this with you this weekend." My father said, his tone reasonable, as if we were talking about borrowing a lawnmower. "Your mother mentioned you called earlier." "Discuss it," I nearly shouted. "You don't discuss something after you have already done it. You ask permission before spending someone else's money." My mother sighed dramatically. "You are blowing this out of proportion." "It is just money. You will make more." "Just money," I repeated incredulously. "That is more than my annual salary. That is my down payment for a condo. That is years of saving and planning." "You were planning to buy property?" my father asked, looking genuinely surprised. "You should have consulted us first. Real estate can be tricky." I stared at him in disbelief. "I am 30 years old. I am a financial advisor. I don't need to consult you about my investments. And you didn't consult me before spending a fortune on Margot's vacation." "It is not a vacation," my mother corrected. "It is a cultural immersion experience. It will be transformative for her." "And what about me? What about my plans that you just destroyed?" My parents exchanged a glance that I recognized from childhood. It was the look they gave each other when they thought I was being difficult. "We thought you would be happy to help your sister," my father said. "Family supports each other. You have always been the responsible one, the successful one. Margot needs this opportunity more than you need another investment." The unfairness of his statement hit me like a slap. I didn't just happen to be the responsible one. I had been forced into that role while they pampered Margot. "You know what I realized today?" I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I realized that you have been financially supporting Margot her entire life. Her college tuition, her apartment, her car, and now this extravagant trip. Meanwhile, I worked my way through school. I built my career without any help. And now you feel entitled to the money I earned." My mother's expression hardened. "That isn't fair, Isadora. We raised you. We fed and clothed you. We provided a stable home." "That is the bare minimum parents are supposed to do," I shot back. "It doesn't entitle you to drain my bank account 20 years later." My father leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. "Look, we admit we should have discussed this with you first. That was an oversight. But what's done is done. Margot is already in Europe. The money has been spent. Then you need to transfer the funds to cover it," I insisted. "Take it from your retirement account. Take out a loan. I don't care how you do it, but you need to make this right." Another meaningful glance between them. "That isn't possible right now," my father said carefully. Our investments have taken a hit recently, and we've had some unexpected expenses. Unexpected expenses like supporting Margot all these years, I asked. My mother's cheeks flushed. Your sister has needed more help than you. She isn't as naturally gifted with money. Not everyone can be as financially savvy as you. Before I could respond, my father's phone chimed. He looked at the screen and his expression brightened. It's a video call from Margot. Let's see how she's doing. Without waiting for my response, he accepted the call. Margot's face appeared on the screen, her background showing an elegant Parisian cafe. Mom, Dad, she exclaimed. You will never believe what I bought today. The most amazing Chanel handbag. It was such a steal. She tilted the phone to show a black quilted handbag that I recognized as costing at least $5,000. My stomach clenched. Margot, I called out, moving into frame. Did you know where the money for your trip came from? Her smile faltered slightly. Isadora. What are you doing there? Did you know Mom and Dad used my credit card to pay for your luxury vacation? She glanced away from the camera. I thought they were handling the financial arrangements. They charged $115,000 to my card without my permission. I pressed. Look, I didn't ask for the specifics, Margot said defensively. They told me they would take care of it, and you didn't question how our parents who are near retirement could suddenly afford to send you on a 6-month luxury tour of Europe. My father tried to interject. Margot doesn't need to be involved in this discussion. She is absolutely involved, I insisted. She is spending my money right now. Margot's expression hardened. I don't appreciate your tone, Isadora. This trip is important for my personal development. I am making connections that will benefit my career for years to come. Her entitlement was breathtaking. While I had been working 60-hour weeks to build my career, she was shopping in Paris with my money and calling it professional development. You need to come home, I said firmly. This trip needs to end now. That is ridiculous, my mother interjected. She can't just cancel everything. The hotels are booked. The tours are paid for. With my money, I reminded her. Money I never agreed to spend. You have always been jealous of my opportunities, Margot accused through the screen. Just because you chose to work all the time doesn't mean I have to live that way. I chose. I laughed bitterly. I didn't have a choice. I had to work because our parents didn't pay my way through life like they did for you. You are being selfish, my father said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he had used when I was a child. Margot deserves this experience. You have the means to help, and that is what family does. I looked from my father to my mother to Margot's face on the screen. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity how they viewed me, not as a daughter or a sister, but as a resource to be tapped for Margot's benefit. Here is my ultimatum, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. You have 24 hours to transfer the money to cover these charges. If you don't, I will report this as credit card fraud. My mother gasped. You wouldn't dare. We are your parents. You are adults who stole from me, I corrected. The fact that we are related doesn't change that. Think about what you are saying, my father warned. If you do that, there will be serious consequences. For all of us. There already are serious consequences. For me, my financial security has been compromised. Margot's voice came through the phone, tearful now. So you would rather see Mom and Dad face legal trouble than help me have this once-in-a-lifetime experience. What kind of sister are you? The kind who has finally had enough, I answered. 24 hours. That's all you get. I turned and walked out of the house, their protests fading behind me. In my car, I finally allowed the tears to fall. Not just for the money, but for the realization that my family had never valued me the way I had valued them. As I drove back to my apartment, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from my parents and Margot. I ignored them all. For the first time in my life, I needed to put myself first. Whatever happened next would change our family forever, but I couldn't continue to be their financial safety net at the expense of my own future. That night was the longest of my life. I tossed and turned, replaying the confrontation with my family over and over in my mind. By morning, I had barely slept, but I knew what I had to do. I called in sick to work for the first time in years. This situation required my full attention. First, I contacted my colleague Jackson, who specialized in financial fraud cases. Jackson, I need your advice, but this stays between us, I said after explaining the situation. Professionally speaking, this is clear-cut, unauthorized use, he confirmed. Authorized users are only supposed to use the card with the primary cardholder's permission, and certainly not for amounts this large without explicit consent. But they are my parents, I said. If I report this as fraud, what happens to them? Jackson sighed. Potentially serious consequences. The credit card company would investigate. If they determine it's fraud, your parents could face criminal charges. At minimum, they would have to repay the money, and their credit would be destroyed. I ran my hand through my hair, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Can I give them more time to pay it back? You could try setting up a payment plan with them. But given what you've told me about their reaction, do you really think they will follow through? He was right. My parents' response had shown no real remorse or understanding of the gravity of what they had done. After thanking Jackson, I called my old college friend Aisha, who had become a successful financial planner at a different firm. This is a violation on so many levels, Isadora, she said after hearing my story. Not just financially, but emotionally. They exploited your trust. I know, I replied, but I keep wondering if I am overreacting. They raised me. Is this how I repay them? By letting them steal your financial security? Aisha challenged. Let's calculate what this really means for you. Together, we went through the numbers. The $115,000 debt would wipe out my down payment savings. Even if I paid only the minimum monthly payments, the interest would accumulate rapidly on such a large sum. My debt-to-income ratio would skyrocket, potentially affecting my ability to qualify for a mortgage in the future. The condo I had been planning to buy would be out of reach for years. If your parents had asked you to lend them this much money for Margot's trip, would you have agreed? Aisha asked. Absolutely not, I said without hesitation. Then why should you be obligated to give it to them now, just because they took it without asking? Her words hit home. Throughout the day, the calls and texts from my family continued. My mother left voicemails alternating between guilt trips and anger. How could you threaten your own parents with legal action? One message said. After everything we have done for you. My father's messages were more manipulative. Your mother hasn't slept all night. Is this what you want? To cause your family this much pain? Around noon, Margot started calling too. When I didn't answer, she sent a barrage of texts. You're just jealous because I'm living the life you were too uptight to pursue. Everyone thinks you're being ridiculous about this. Everyone, I wondered. Had my parents involved the extended family already? Sure enough, by afternoon, I had messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins. Most had clearly heard only my parents' version of events. Family helps family, my Aunt Susan wrote. Your sister deserves this opportunity. My Uncle Mark was more direct. You make good money. Don't be selfish. Only my cousin Rachel, who had also worked her way through college, seemed skeptical of the narrative. There's definitely more to this story, she texted. Call me when you can talk. As the day wore on, I did more research on credit card fraud involving family members. The stories I found were heartbreaking. People whose financial lives were ruined by parents, siblings, or children who had abused their trust. Many had chosen not to press charges out of love or obligation, only to have the cycle of financial abuse continue. By evening, I had made my decision. I couldn't let my parents off the hook this time. Their behavior wouldn't change if there were no consequences. And I couldn't sacrifice my financial future, which I had worked so hard to build. With a heavy heart, I called the credit card company again. I need to report unauthorized charges on my account, I said, when the representative answered. I can help you with that, she replied. Can you tell me which charges you're disputing? All of the charges made by Diana Patterson, the authorized user. They were made without my knowledge or permission. I understand. I'll need to ask you some questions about these charges and your relationship with the authorized user. For the next hour, I answered detailed questions about when I had added my parents to the account, what the original purpose had been, and whether I had ever given them permission to use the card for other expenses. I explained that I had forgotten to remove them as authorized users after the medical emergency, but had never given them permission to make any other charges. Thank you for this information, the representative said when we had finished. We'll open an investigation into these charges. You will not be responsible for any unauthorized transactions while the investigation is ongoing. We'll be in touch if we need any additional information." After the call ended, I sat in my silent apartment feeling both relief and dread. The wheels were now in motion. My parents would soon receive notification of the fraud investigation. There would be no going back. That night, I took additional precautions. I changed all my passwords and security questions for my financial accounts. I gathered important documents like my birth certificate and social security card, which I had kept in my parents' house, and moved them to a safety deposit box at my bank. I even froze my credit to prevent any new accounts from being opened in my name. These actions felt extreme, but the trust between me and my family had been shattered. I needed to protect myself from any further financial violations. As I finally fell into an exhausted sleep, I wondered what the coming days would bring. I had stood up for myself perhaps for the first time in my relationship with my parents. But the cost of that stand remained to be seen. 3 days after I reported the fraud, the storm broke. My parents received formal notification from the credit card company about the investigation. Within an hour, my phone was ringing non-stop. "You actually did it," my father said when I finally answered his call, his voice a mixture of shock and fury. "You reported us to the credit card company. I gave you 24 hours to make arrangements to pay back the money," I reminded him, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You chose not to. We're your parents, Isadora." "How could you do this to us? How could you steal $115,000 from me?" I countered. "It wasn't stealing," my mother chimed in from the extension. "We're family. We intended to help you pay it off eventually." "That's not how financial transactions work, Mom. You don't take someone's money without permission and then decide later if and when you might pay it back." "Do you have any idea what you've done?" my father demanded. "This could ruin our credit. There could be legal consequences." "I'm aware," I replied. "I warned you this would happen if you didn't take responsibility." After another 10 minutes of accusations and recriminations, I ended the call. I needed to prepare for work the next day, and their guilt trips weren't changing my resolve. The following weekend, I received a call from my grandmother, my father's mother. She had always been the family peacekeeper. "There's going to be a family meeting at my house tomorrow," she informed me. "Everyone will be there. We need to resolve the situation before it gets worse." I agreed to attend, though I had no intention of backing down. When I arrived at my grandmother's house on Sunday afternoon, the atmosphere was tense. My parents sat stiffly on one side of the living room. Several aunts, uncles, and cousins were scattered around, their expressions ranging from curiosity to disapproval. Margot was notably absent. "Where's Margot?" I asked as I took a seat. "She's flying home," my mother said sharply. "Her trip has been ruined thanks to you." My grandmother raised her hand for silence. "We're here to find a solution, not assign blame." For the next 2 hours, the situation was discussed from every angle. My parents presented their version of events, painting themselves as well-intentioned parents who had simply wanted to help their younger daughter experience the world. They downplayed the amount spent and emphasized their intention to help me pay it off eventually. When my turn came to speak, I laid out the facts plainly: the unauthorized use of my credit card, the enormous sum spent without my knowledge or consent, my parents' refusal to take responsibility when confronted, their history of financially favoring Margot at my expense. Some family members were clearly on my parents' side. "But they're your parents," my Aunt Lydia protested. "After everything they've done for you, you owe them some grace." Others, particularly my cousins, who had worked their way through college as I had, seemed more understanding of my position. "$115,000 is life-changing money," my cousin Rachel pointed out. "That's not a small favor between family members." The debate grew heated at times, with accusations of selfishness from one side and financial irresponsibility from the other. My grandmother tried repeatedly to steer the conversation toward compromise. Perhaps Isadora could drop the fraud claim if her parents sign an agreement to pay back the money, she suggested. "But we don't have that kind of money," my father admitted, finally revealing a truth I had suspected. "We've been helping Margot with her expenses for years. Our savings aren't what they should be at this stage." This revelation shifted the energy in the room. Many family members hadn't realized the extent of my parents' financial support of Margot, or how it contrasted with their treatment of me. As the meeting wore on without resolution, my phone buzzed with a news alert. To my horror, it was from our local community paper. Local financial advisor reports parents for credit card fraud. Someone had leaked the story. I held up my phone showing the headline to the room. The situation has gone public, I said, my voice tight with stress. My parents blanched. Your father's reputation at his firm. My mother began trailing off as the implications sank in. The meeting ended soon after with no real resolution. My parents left without speaking to me, surrounded by sympathetic relatives. Others gave me supportive glances or touches on the shoulder as they departed. The family had effectively split into two camps. The following week brought new complications. At work, I could feel colleagues watching me whispering when I passed. My boss called me into her office to discuss the situation. Your personal financial situation reflects on the company, she explained gently. Clients trust us with their money. Any hint of financial impropriety, even in your personal life, can damage that trust. I haven't done anything wrong, I insisted. I'm the victim here. I understand that, she assured me. Just make sure this gets resolved quickly and quietly. The stress began affecting my health. I wasn't sleeping well, I lost weight. The constant anxiety of checking my phone for new developments took a toll. Then came the letter from my parents' lawyer, suggesting that I had given implicit permission for them to use the card by not removing them as authorized users after the medical emergency. It threatened countersuits for defamation and emotional distress if I didn't drop the fraud claim immediately. I forwarded the letter to a lawyer friend, who confirmed what I already suspected. The threat was mostly empty posturing. Authorized users still need explicit permission for each use of the credit card, especially for large amounts. The letter was an intimidation tactic, not a strong legal position. As the credit card company's investigation proceeded, more details emerged. My parents had apparently been struggling financially for years, a fact they had hidden from the family. They had been supporting Margot through a series of failed job attempts and extravagant spending habits. Their own credit cards were maxed out, which explained why they had turned to mine for Margot's trip. This revelation should have made me more sympathetic, but instead, it made me angry. If they were in financial trouble, why continue enabling Margot's spending? Why not tell me the truth and ask for help rather than taking my money without permission? The breaking point came when Margot showed up at my apartment one evening. She had cut her trip short and flown home economy class, a stark contrast to the first-class ticket she had enjoyed on my dime. You've ruined everything, she accused as soon as I opened the door. Do you know how humiliating it was to have to cancel my tours and leave early? I let her in, closing the door behind her. How did you pay for the flight home? I asked, suddenly suspicious. She looked away. Mom and Dad put it on their emergency credit card. So they do have credit available, I noted. They just chose to use my card for your luxury vacation instead. It wasn't a vacation, she shouted. It was going to be a life-changing experience. I was going to find my purpose. At 30 years old, standing in my modest apartment that I had worked so hard to afford, listening to my 26-year-old sister, who still lived in our parents' basement, complain about her interrupted soul-searching tour of Europe, something broke inside me. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my apartment. Get out of my life. Until you and our parents understand what you've done, I don't want anything to do with any of you. She stared at me, shocked. You don't mean that. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I replied, opening the door. Family doesn't exploit each other. What you three did wasn't love or support. It was financial abuse, and I'm done being your victim. After she left, I sat on my couch and cried. Not for the money, though. That loss still stung. I cried for the family I had thought I had, the one I had worked so hard to please and support, who had never truly valued me the way I had valued them. But beneath the grief, I felt something else stirring. A sense of power and self-respect that had been missing in my family relationships for as long as I could remember. I had stood my ground. I had protected myself. And regardless of what happened next, I knew I would never allow them to take advantage of me again. 2 months after I reported the fraud, the credit card company completed its investigation. Their conclusion was unequivocal. The charges were indeed fraudulent. My parents had used my card without authorization for expenses that I had never approved. The company removed the charges from my account and restored my credit score. They also forwarded their findings to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. When I received the email notification of their decision, I felt a complex mix of emotions: relief that I wouldn't be responsible for the debt, vindication that my version of events had been confirmed, but also sadness that the situation had escalated to this point. My lawyer called the next day with an update. The DA's office wants to talk to you about pressing charges against your parents. Given the amount involved, this could be classified as grand theft. I closed my eyes trying to process this information. What are my options? You could push for full prosecution, which could result in criminal charges, possible jail time, and restitution. Or you could work with them to find an alternative resolution that still holds your parents accountable, but without criminal charges. After considering my options carefully, I agreed to meet with the prosecutor assigned to the case. She was a straight-talking woman in her 50s who had seen countless family financial fraud cases. Your case is particularly clear-cut, she explained after reviewing the evidence. The amount is substantial, and there's a documented pattern of financial exploitation. I don't want my parents to go to jail, I admitted, but I do want them to understand what they've done and take responsibility. We discussed alternatives to criminal prosecution. Eventually, we agreed on a plan. My parents would enter into a strict restitution agreement, undergo financial counseling, and the incident would be recorded with credit bureaus and financial institutions to prevent them from opening new lines of credit in the near future. If they violated the agreement, criminal charges could still be filed. When this proposal was presented to my parents through their lawyer, they initially balked, but faced with the alternative of criminal charges, they reluctantly agreed. The court hearing to finalize the agreement was scheduled for early October. In the intervening weeks, I had no contact with my parents or Margot. Through family grapevines, I heard that Margot had finally moved out of the basement and gotten a job at a local marketing firm. My parents had begun downsizing, selling their second car, and cutting back on expenses to prepare for the restitution payments. On the day of the hearing, I saw my family for the first time in nearly 3 months. My parents looked older, the stress of the situation etched into their faces. Margot sat behind them, her expression unreadable. As the judge reviewed the terms of the agreement, my father kept his eyes fixed on the floor. My mother occasionally glanced at me, her expression a mixture of hurt and anger. I maintained my composure, focusing on the proceedings rather than the emotional undercurrents in the room. Before finalizing the agreement, the judge asked if anyone wanted to make a statement. To my surprise, Margot stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to say something," she began, her voice unsteady. "I was complicit in what happened. I knew the trip was expensive, and I should have questioned where the money was coming from. I didn't want to know because it was easier to just enjoy the experience. I'm sorry, Isadora. I took advantage of you, too." Her unexpected apology brought tears to my eyes. It was the first acknowledgement from any family member that what they had done was wrong. My father spoke next, his voice barely audible. "We made a terrible mistake. We breached our daughter's trust in the worst way. The embarrassment and shame we feel—" He trailed off, unable to continue. My mother remained silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. After reviewing all the evidence and statements, the judge approved the agreement. My parents would pay back the full amount over 5 years with monthly payments directly to me. They would attend financial counseling sessions and maintain complete transparency about their finances during the repayment period. In return, no criminal charges would be filed. As we left the courtroom, I found myself alone in the hallway with my family for the first time since the confrontation. The silence was heavy with unspoken emotions. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," I said finally, looking at each of them. "But I'm willing to give you the chance to make this right." My father nodded, tears in his eyes. "We'll do whatever it takes." My mother's response was more guarded. "I still think you could have handled this without involving the authorities. But what's done is done." Margot approached me hesitantly. "Can we talk sometime? Just the two of us?" I nodded, not ready to commit to more than that. "Maybe, but not right now." As I walked away from them toward my car, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself against my family's pattern of exploitation. The road ahead would be difficult, and our relationships might never fully recover. But I had asserted my worth and my boundaries, and that was a victory that no one could take away from me. In the weeks following the hearing, I joined a support group for victims of financial abuse by family members. The stories I heard there helped me understand that what had happened to me wasn't unique or my fault. Many others had experienced similar betrayals by the people who were supposed to love them most. One woman's words particularly resonated with me. Financial abuse is still abuse. Just because there are no bruises doesn't mean you haven't been harmed. Those words helped me work through the guilt I still occasionally felt about reporting my parents. I hadn't damaged our family. Their actions had. I had simply refused to be a victim. With the fraud case resolved, I could finally return my focus to my career and personal goals. The condo I had originally wanted was no longer on the market, but with my credit restored and the fraud alert removed from my account, I could resume my search for a home of my own. And though the path to healing would be long, I had taken the first steps toward building a life where my boundaries were respected and my worth wasn't measured by what I could give to others. 6 months after the court hearing, I stood in the kitchen of my new condo, arranging flowers in a vase by the window. The view wasn't of the Charles River as I had originally hoped, but the small park across the street provided a pleasant green space in the urban landscape. It was mine, purchased with the money I had saved and protected. And that meant everything. My financial security had been fully restored. The credit card company had removed all traces of the fraud from my record. The monthly restitution payments from my parents arrived punctually, transferred directly to my account without any contact required between us. Our relationship remained strained, limited to occasional text messages and brief updates through my grandmother. I wasn't ready for more, and they seemed to finally understand that they needed to respect my boundaries. Margot had surprised everyone by making significant changes in her life. She had maintained her job at the marketing firm for 6 months now, her longest stretch of stable employment. She had found an affordable apartment with 2 roommates and was learning to budget for the first time in her life. 3 months after the hearing, I had received a letter from her. "I've been thinking about everything that happened," she wrote. "For the first time, I'm supporting myself completely, and it's hard, but also empowering. I understand now what you've been doing all these years, and I'm sorry I never respected it before. If you're willing, I'd like to meet for coffee sometime." No pressure, just a chance to talk. After 2 weeks of consideration, I had agreed. We met at a neutral cafe halfway between our apartments. The conversation was awkward at first, both of us carefully avoiding certain topics. "I'm seeing a therapist," Margot told me eventually. "She's helping me understand how our family dynamic shaped both of us. I was the golden child, and you were the scapegoat. It wasn't fair to either of us." I appreciated her insight, but forgiveness wouldn't come quickly or easily. Still, it was a start. We had met twice more since then, each conversation a small step toward rebuilding something new between us. My parents' journey had been more complicated. The financial counseling required by the court agreement had forced them to confront years of poor money management and enabling behavior. My father had sent a lengthy email describing their progress. "We've had to face some hard truths," he wrote. "We didn't just fail you, we failed ourselves and Margot too. The counselor is helping us understand how our behavior set her up for financial dependency. We're learning boundaries and responsibility that we should have practiced decades ago." My mother's communications were briefer and less introspective, but she was complying with the agreement. According to my grandmother, they had significantly downsized their lifestyle, selling many possessions, and considering moving to a smaller home. As for me, I had found strength in building new connections outside my family. I joined a women's financial empowerment group, where I met Sarah and Lena, both successful professionals who understood the unique challenges women faced in managing money and setting boundaries. Our weekend hikes and monthly dinner parties became highlights in my calendar. They celebrated with me when I closed on my condo and helped me paint the walls and assemble furniture. These friendships, based on mutual respect rather than obligation, showed me what healthy relationships could look like. I also found purpose in sharing my experience to help others. I started volunteering at a community center teaching financial literacy classes focused particularly on family financial boundaries. The women and men who attended my workshops often shared their own stories of financial exploitation by loved ones, and I could see the relief in their eyes when they realized they weren't alone. One particular student, a woman in her 50s named Janet, approached me after class one evening. "My son has been using my credit cards for years," she confessed. "I've been afraid to confront him because he's family. But listening to you made me realize I need to protect myself too." Hearing that my story had given her courage was deeply healing. The pain I had experienced could serve a purpose if it helped others avoid similar situations. In my professional life, things had stabilized after the initial awkwardness following the news story. My boss had been impressed by how I handled the situation with dignity and professionalism. 6 months after the court hearing, she called me into her office. "We're launching a new initiative focused on helping clients prevent and recover from financial fraud," she announced. "Given your personal experience and professional expertise, I think you'd be perfect to lead it." The opportunity to transform my painful experience into a professional specialty felt like the closing of a circle. I accepted immediately and threw myself into developing educational materials and protocols for clients who had experienced financial violations. My personal life had begun blooming in unexpected ways, too. At a financial conference in Chicago, I met Daniel, a forensic accountant who specialized in family financial disputes. Our conversation about ethical approaches to family money conflicts led to dinner, which led to regular phone calls after I returned to Boston. 3 months later, he took a position with a firm in Boston and asked me to dinner again. Unlike previous relationships where I had sometimes downplayed my financial independence or success with Daniel, I could be completely authentic. He respected my boundaries and understood the importance of financial autonomy within relationships. As Thanksgiving approached, I received an invitation from my Aunt Rachel, who had supported me throughout the ordeal with my parents. "I'm hosting this year," her message read. "Your parents will be there, but so will many other family members. No pressure, but you're welcome if you feel comfortable." After careful consideration, I decided to attend. It would be the first family gathering since the court hearing. The thought made my stomach knot with anxiety, but avoiding family events forever wasn't the solution either. On Thanksgiving morning, as I prepared a pumpkin pie to bring to my aunt's house, I reflected on the journey of the past year, from the shocking discovery of the credit card charges to the painful confrontation in the legal proceedings, and finally, the slow process of rebuilding my life on my terms. The experience had taught me that real love doesn't come with financial exploitation, that family relationships should be based on mutual respect, not one-sided sacrifice, that setting boundaries isn't selfish, but necessary for healthy connections. I had also learned that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or returning to the way things were. It can mean creating a new relationship with clearer boundaries and expectations. Or sometimes it simply means letting go of anger while maintaining distance from those who have hurt you. Most importantly, I had discovered my own strength, the courage to stand up for myself even when it meant facing disapproval and conflict, the resilience to rebuild after betrayal, the wisdom to create a life filled with relationships that nourished rather than drained me. As I carefully placed the pie in a carrier and gathered my things to leave, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for much of my life. Whatever happened at the family gathering today, I knew who I was and what I deserved. No one could take that knowledge away from me. The journey ahead would continue to have its challenges. Rebuilding trust with my family would take years if it happened at all. But for the first time, I was living life on my own terms, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. And that was worth more than any amount of money could ever buy. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who crossed your financial boundaries? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about setting healthy boundaries and building authentic relationships. Share this video with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, your worth isn't determined by what you give others, but by the self-respect you maintain when others try to take advantage of your generosity.